MysteryWire.com, home of the unusual and unknown. From Area 51 to the paranormal, it's your source to the most vetted UFO stories and special investigations in the world. Take a journey into the universe of MysteryWire.com.
All right, protect yourself at all times. We are on it. Here we go with another edition of the Mystery Wire podcast. Part 2 of our exclusive interview with Jeremy Corbell. This is fascinating. I learned a lot of stuff. Talked about the Joe Rogan trip. More on that Joe Rogan trip coming up here in a little bit. We have with us, of course, George Knapp. We've got Matt Adams and Duncan Phoenix. As usual here, I'm Ron Futrell, but our special guest, Jeremy Corbell. Let's jump right into Part 2 of our interview with Jeremy Corbell. All right, a quick reset for you here. Introduce everybody, let you know what we've got going here with the Mystery Wire podcast. George Knapp is at his home studio. We'll call it that indeed, a studio that you've got there, George. Matt Adams, photojournalist for years with George, has been at his side, and Duncan Phoenix has worked as producer with Mystery Wire. And Jeremy Corbell is also joining us, filmmaker and everything of the supernatural extraordinaire. Do I see Jeremy on there, though? Is he on there? Do you see him?
He's there.
Guys? Okay, I don't see him. Okay, Jeremy, give me your thoughts on Mystery Wire. I want to hear what you think of that from somebody. And now you're not on the outside type of thing, but certainly you were able to see it from a distance a little bit when we dropped Mystery Wire. Was there anything, Jeremy, that you saw there that sort of knocked your socks off a little bit? Some of the historic stuff in particular.
Yeah, it's tectonic. People will start to understand what George is doing, and only he can do it. He and Matt are the only people on planet Earth that can do this. And basically what I noticed with Mystery Wire is that when you do a news report, for as a layman, I'm not a news guy, you get a 12-second, maybe a minute bite from somebody, but George has been deep into this topic, recording long-form interviews with Matt. George has been at this 30-something years on the UFO topic, since 1989. And what he and Matt have done over the years, the public has only seen in these short form packages on the news that then go away. So what Mystery Wire does is it allows people to see these unedited, long form interviews with these historic figures throughout history, throughout decades, regarding the UFO topic. It is invaluable. It is the Akashic record of the UFO reality and the UFO presence and associated phenomena, because UFOs is part of a much larger, begrudgingly, I'm allergic to it, I had to accept it. UFOs is part of a much bigger story. So Mystery Wire is the same journalistic integrity that George has held for decades, and that Matt has created with him. So you're able to see this Akashic record of credible UFO reporting. There's nothing like it on planet Earth. There cannot be anything like it on planet Earth. It's just unique. And so the idea that people can go to mysterywire.com and they can tune in to these long form, on the cutting room floor, videos and edits and interviews, it is invaluable to the study of the UFO phenomenon. And it helps uncoil the kind of complex, I don't know even how to say it, but the complex briar patch of the UFO topic. So I'm a huge fan of mysterywire.com. Huge fan. And not just because I'm I see it first or see it on the inside, because it's just part of pop culture. Mystery Wire will become part of pop culture. And you will see the ramifications of that when TV shows mention a tip. Well, guess what? That's George's reporting. When Fox Mulder or whoever it was, Scully, gets a text on the phone about A-Tip and it's in the X-Files. All of this is because of what's happened before. And so pop culture's catching on. So yeah, man, I go to Mystery Wire every day. It's pretty unique.
Jeremy was thoughtful enough to go ahead and plug it on Rogan, and it's, I host a radio show and interviews and things. And I hate when people try to push their product on you and force you to plug it and everything. And so I wasn't going to do that with Rogan. I didn't bring it up, but you did, which allowed us to at least mention Mystery Wire during the show. He seemed to be unaware of it. It's like with the Hunt for the Skinwalker book. I took some along to leave for him and his staff, but certainly don't want to plug it. It's a fine line, right? In dealing with Rogan, you don't want to don't want to be too exploitive of the opportunity to be on his platform, but you do want to let people know what's going on.
Yeah, and he picked up on it. I mean, here's the deal, man. I wasn't bragging. I was confessing. I was saying that, over decades, the only place where all this archive is going to be is through George. And he asked, well, where do I see it? I wasn't setting it up. It was just, I was telling it like it was. And, look, I get a lot of criticism, it's just the nature of the beast. For example, with the Element 115 video that was in my film, he just says it's in his film. Well, look, that stuff, it wasn't ever shown publicly. George had a pan of it in one of his news reports, but I was able to find that portion of the video. So it was in my movie. It was just in my movie. I didn't know, but Jamie, who's the Wizard of Oz of the Rogan show, the webmaster, was able to find a clip of it. But yeah, the point is, look, I'm not selling anything. I'm an enthusiast, so I'm making films. But what George has created with Matt and what they're at the helm of with Mystery Wire, it's really profound. And so luckily there was a question asked, where can we find all this? And it's very simple where they can find it.
To be fair about the video that he was talking about on the podcast, there is so much that you guys could have gone over. There are so many things you could have talked about. You would have had to bring in a hard drive completely full of video and sound bites and everything to just cover your bases of the stuff that you might be talking about. So, I mean, just not having a video on hand and then suddenly dismissing it because you don't have the video, or, it's a little strange.
I didn't even want to share those mutilation images. That has not been made public yet. It's a case that George helped me on, and it was a relatively fresh mutilation case, and an actual case, 2 metallic tools. And I've been doing scientific research on it. I've been taking it to laboratories. And I was like, it's on my phone. It's not public, but that's the nature of the beast. You got to get to the core of it. You got to get to it quick. You got to show everybody. More important than anything, people start asking questions. So you kind of lay the pipe. You're like, this stuff is real. This happened. And now your questions are more important than anything we could have ever asked. So it's just the nature of the beast that things move fast, man.
Now, speaking of how fast things move, as you guys are sitting in Joe Rogan's studio recording the podcast, there's another thing happening. There's a Miami reporter, a television reporter with CBS in Miami, doing similar to what we're doing an interview over Zoom or Skype with Marco Rubio, Senator Marco Rubio from Florida, who just happens to, the reporter, I'm not sure if he knew what he was asking, but he asked him about the intelligence bill, the funding bill, and Rubio decided to talk about it. And he flat out said, and again, this is a U.S. senator saying that there are things that we don't know what they are flying above our military bases. That's pretty remarkable. And that was happening as you guys were on the show talking about this.
The timing is impeccable, as they say, as Jiminy Cricket would say. Yeah, impeccable.
So this is a huge development. It's big, and it shows how far we've come in the last 2.5 years. 2 years ago, the second and third videos were made public. Lou Elizondo is the one that set this in motion. He did not have the authority to release them on his own, but he set it in motion. Not only those videos, those 3, but others. And he filled out the paperwork, and he followed protocols, and the people in that office gave him permission, go ahead and release it. people have vilified him for as if he stole them in his lunch pail and carried them home from the Pentagon or something. They were released with permission, and which is why we've all got to see them. The world got to see them. And the Pentagon hemmed and hawed and tried to muddy the waters as they always do, but couldn't. He followed protocols. They released the information had been investigated by multiple agencies in the federal government, and it remains unidentified. One of the people who became interested in this in 2018 is Senator Marco Rubio. At the time, he was a junior member of the Intelligence Committee. He is, because of other political events, he became elevated to become chairman of the Intel Committee earlier this year. And he got briefed. When he found out that gimbal had been recorded off the coast of Florida, he was curious. He was one of the senators, along with staff members, who were briefed by the Pentagon, by the current UFO program, which is sort of successor to ATIP. We now know, and reluctantly, the Pentagon has had to admit, yes, we've got a program, because they've tried to muddy those waters too. Oh, ATIP, yeah, that ended in 2012. We didn't find anything interesting. It's not about UFOs. Lou Elizondo didn't work for it. Anything they can do to stir the pot and cast aspersions on information that was reported by the New York Times and then by us. So Rubio wanted to get to the bottom of it, along with other members of Congress. And they've now been shown the evidence. They've heard the testimony face to face from the pilots. They know that this is not a bird or balloon or flare, that it's something unidentified. And for him to come out while we are there taping this interview, this program with Joe Rogan, and say, yeah, they're flying over our bases. And not only are they unidentified, he hopes that they're not Russian or Chinese. He hopes they're from somewhere else, aliens or whatever, because if it's Russians or Chinese, we're in big trouble. If our adversaries have that technology, we're in big trouble. That is what members of Congress on those two key committees are supposed to do, to look into this stuff. I have a friend who works at the Pentagon who had shared with me a phrase that I had not heard before. He called it great power competition. He's explaining that in order to pursue this mystery, to investigate this, we don't have to believe in aliens. Some of the people who are working on this program are obviously curious about the exotic sort of possibilities of where these craft are from, and that's in the back of their mind. But the great power competition is they periodically evaluate our military readiness in comparison to our adversaries, notably China and Russia. General Mattis had, I think, created that phrase where we need to know we're top of the food chain, not only by a little bit, by a lot. So when you've got craft flying around like that, it is their job to figure out how this stuff works, where it comes from, what the intentions are of the people flying these things, whether it's alien or Chinese or it's from Moscow. That's their job. And they don't have to believe in aliens for it. So I think that also gives political cover for people like Senator Rubio, who, by the way, would not be maybe somebody I would vote for a variety of other reasons, but he's showing leadership on this. It is a no-win for these guys, for the people who are on that committee, those committees, to go ahead and say, yeah, I want to know about UFOs. I want to know about what identified things are flying in our sky. It can be used as a cudgel, as a bludgeon against them in future political races. But they've done it. They've done the right thing on it. And I'm so encouraged that it happened and thrilled that it happened given the timing of where we were at the time.
Not only that,
all of this takes, go ahead, Matt.
The people that have come together to push this forward. We had our former Senate Majority Leader, Democratic Senator, who pushed for this to happen. His partners in crime were across the political spectrum. Now you have Marco Rubio, who's a very conservative leader in the Republican Party. He's been a senior senator for his state, and now he's coming out. Thank goodness this hasn't become political yet. I think the national security implications of what's going on are the only things that have kept this from becoming a political football.
And George or someone else, describe to me why Rubio, not only just for an interest, but he's in charge of the money behind this, or at least asking for the money, correct? This is how this is kind of snowballed this year. Yeah,
this is another one of those stories that in calmer times would be a headline for weeks, is he drops the intelligence bill that has the budgetary proposals for the next fiscal year, And included in there, some sharp-eyed researchers had noticed it before we did. Danny Silva wrote about it, and they noticed that there's a section in there where they are requesting a formal mechanism be established where the Pentagon and intelligence agencies and the FBI all have to take a look at their files when these incidents happen, like Tic Tac or Gimbal, and they're investigated and reported. We want to see that stuff. Congress says we want to see it, and the public wants to see it. And so they're establishing, that bill would establish a mechanism for regular reporting of UFO-related material, at least the unclassified stuff. There is classified information that comes in. The sensors that gather the information is classified. The operations that come across this info might be classified, but the information itself doesn't have to be, at least some of it, and they want to see it. And it's great. It is a sea change. It is a tectonic sort of a shift for Congress to come out and say that and put it in a bill rather than hide it in some special access program. So anybody out there who's interested in UFO transparency should contact their members of Congress and say, hey, we support this thing.
I want to mention real quick. So with my films being on Netflix and Hulu and Amazon, all this stuff, there's something coming. I worked really hard on it. So my business partner, Ruben Langdon, and I, we've re-edited and remastered the citizen hearing on disclosure. We had 40 witnesses in front of 5 congressional members and a senator in a mock congressional hearing saying, this is real. This is going on. There was a concrete result from that, which was an individual who was harmed by UAP exposure, UFO exposure at Bentwaters, and he got full medical coverage. They were trying to deny he was ever there. So this whole thing that happened called the citizen hearing, that the unsung hero is this guy, Ruben Langdon, right? He's my business partner. He's the guy that like helped edit all of this and put it on. It's coming back out. The whole world's going to see this again. This is in a new light. It's going to be everywhere really soon. And the whole idea is that people can see what is going on with the UFO topic. What does our government know? So that's another kind of huge bell that's going to be rung, is that we're going to see, oh, congressional interest? Well, check this out. You already have the testimony. It was filmed over multiple days at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. in front of 5 members of Congress and 1 senator. Are you ready for this? So it's an exciting time in that everything is being viewed differently now. Does that make sense?
And one of the guys that a lot of these lawmakers and their staff go to and have gone to for years now, a familiar name to us, Lou Elizondo, he dropped a little bit of knowledge on the world this weekend. George, real quick, give us a synopsis of Lou and what he's saying now.
So coast to coast last Sunday night, the timing again is amazing in that after the news that has been breaking over the last couple of weeks, then we do the Joe Rogan podcast, and then that Sunday night when we get back to Las Vegas, Matt and I've got coast to coast with Chris Mellon, former Pentagon official. He had been a senior staffer for the Intelligence Committee and worked with Armed Services for many years. And then Lou Elizondo, who had been the program manager for ATIP and is probably more responsible for those videos being made public than any single individual. They're on coast to coast and shared their thoughts on the progress that's been made, how Congress has now taken it seriously, the role that they had in making sure that witnesses became available with the help of the Navy to go and testify before Congress, and all the difference that it made. They systematically destroyed the debunking efforts of the 3 videos, among other things. And then Lou Elizondo dropped a couple of nuggets. Number one, he said all of those dramatic incidents that have been reported, that we've reported, is going on across the East Coast, where pilots are encountering these UFOs. Dozens of pilots had been reporting them, these beach balls with cubes inside of them off the coast of Virginia. That's still going on. That's a pretty remarkable piece of information, that it is still going on, that they're still seeing them on an almost daily basis. And then the other bombshell he dropped is, Jeremy and I have reported at different times in different contexts that there are other UFO programs, that there have been other UFO studies hidden away in the bowels of government. And the information had never been really confirmed on the record before, but Elizondo said that while on Capitol Hill, while getting a briefing, a closed-door briefing with some top-level people, there was another individual in the room with him. This guy stepped forward and basically told him, I had your job back in the 80s, that there was, in fact, another UFO study, that they had been pursuing some of the same information 30 years ago, that Elizondo had no idea that there had been another program, or if he did, he didn't have confirmation in the form of somebody who had run it, speaking to him directly. I'm hopeful that we'll be able to get more information about that specific program and that individual over the next couple of weeks, but we'll see. You might recall that Harry Reid, in 2009, when he tried to take OSAP ATIP and turn it into a special access program, we interviewed him about the letter that he had sent to the Department of Defense asking for SAP status. And he said one of the main reasons he wanted to do that was so his program, the program he created, could have access to other programs, to other materials. About as strong a confirmation as you can get that there are other programs and efforts that have been studying this, gathering information that we have not seen. So I thank Lou for dropping that nugget. Obviously, there are a lot of unanswered questions about it, but I am hopeful that we'll be able to get to the bottom of it sooner rather than later.
Would this have been a project, George, timing-wise? Would this have been something that was post-Project Blue Book, which we all know about, certainly, and something to fit that middle period and the stuff that Harry Reid had put together?
Exactly.
Something that would fit that time period. And it would make sense, would it not? If you're putting logic to it, that they would have something in there. Project Blue Book blew up in their face and didn't come out the way they wanted it to come out, certainly, thanks to the guys investigating it. We're honest. Okay, so would have fit that time frame.
Yeah,
right
so Blue Book ended in 1969. Air Force washes its hands. We're done with this. We've studied it. There's no indication it's a problem for national security. We're done. And they based that on the Condon study that was highly controversial. I'll put it that way, as a mild way to put it. And so they officially walked away. But of course they didn't walk away. There's always been, they can't help it. When these things are flying over nuclear bases, nuclear plants, when they're buzzing the Nimitz carrier group or other military facilities and outfits, of course they're going to gather that information. Where it's all gone, we don't know. After Blue Book ended, there was a General Bolender who put out this now famous memo that says, all right, any cases involving national security will continue to go to the normal channels. Well, what is that? What channels are you talking about? Where is it? We still don't really know where that is, but of course there have been studies in between Blue Book and ATIP, and we're just now getting a solid indication that confirms that. So I can't wait to dig into that and get more information, but it confirms suspicions that many of us have had for a long time and that make perfect sense if you think about it.
Take this for whatever you value it at. I know George will value it at more because he knows my sources. I am confident with telling you that every branch of our military and intelligence apparatus has continuously studied the UFO phenomenon since before Project Blue Book, and that there is a clearinghouse. There is a specific location, and I am confident now with that location. And I will be, trying to put that information out in the right way. But it is my direct knowledge at this point. Again, take this for however you want to value it. I don't care. But there is a location that is the clearinghouse for all UFO reporting. I'll even say a museum of paper as a direct quote.
And now there's 1,000 people at shredding machines right now that you've revealed that. Let's get rid of this stuff.
Oh no, delete it then. But I mean, an active location on a Navy base that has continuously been the warehouse, storehouse for this knowledge, data, and information that has been coming in since the beginning. You have to have a central location, an active central location. I can't wait to start talking about that. But
You just did.
Yeah, the moving vans are pulling up right now.
Well, Dang it. I mean, I don't know, delete this part. But I mean, the thing is, I'm very confident that we're going to be learning more about that. I know we are, because I'm going to talk about it and I'm going to provide it evidence and information. But this is something that we've all thought about. The U.S. government, of course, did not stop studying UFO. Are you kidding me? And George has provided more proof about that than any other human being on planet Earth. But if we can nail this down, we can peel back that layer. We can shine the pop culture light. Say, we want to know. You work for us. Military, you work for us. That's the standpoint of people who are in command of these bases. That's the standpoint of people who are true patriots and Americans. So if that's true, we want to know. I think I-Team's going to be breaking a story.
Yeah, you just kind of gave people a treasure map to go.
Oh, man, I got to just delete that, man. Oh, man. I don't know if I said anyway.
Yeah. By the way, I think we're going to take some questions before we move on. I just want to mention about Jeremy and the heat that he takes when he makes statements like this. Every time he's been on Rogan, and now I'm getting some of it too. But man, the outpouring a lot of it is jealousy, but it's really nasty stuff. And it comes in overwhelming waves. The kind of reaction you get from hardcore UFO people and then hardcore Rogan fans who don't like the UFO subject. It's pretty nasty. I mean, Jeremy, I don't know if you want to talk about it, but I think the world should hear a little bit about it, what it's like.
Yeah, I mean, look, man, I might not be your favorite person, but I'm myself. And I don't know how to be anybody else. And sometimes my enthusiasm can be taken apparently in different ways. But yeah, there's a lot of personal attacks. Anytime you bring your head up out of water, I try not to engage it. I don't read my emails anymore. And if somebody has my phone number, they'll text me and say they sent an email. And yeah, it's harsh. It's crazy. People are violently angry. And I don't know why, and I can't help it, but I'm very comfortable in my own skin. I have been for a long time. So this wave of anger, violence, you just let it go, and I can pretend that I'm perfect at that, and I'm not. It does affect me when it gets through. It has started to affect me since the Lazar film. Look, I'm the shadow. I'm the lurker.
The haunt.
I'm the haunt. What is that idiot doing up there? None of this would have happened if Joe and I weren't talking about it. So it's just crazy to me. But look, man, it's comical when I can separate myself from it. But yeah, there are people very much intent in, dissuading me from being a human.
All right, well, now's the time of the podcast. We're going to do a little lightning round here. We got about 7 minutes we'll give you on the clock here. I'm going to go through some questions. We asked people on Twitter and Facebook to send George and Jeremy some questions. So let me rattle off some here if you guys want to give some quickish answers. I'll start with an easy one that you surely you can answer. Splash Hyena asks, George, did you ever sign an NDA that prohibits you from releasing relevant information?
No.
There you go. Jeremy?
I would always like to have the opportunity and knock at the door where somebody comes in and says, hey, okay, we'll show you the flying saucers at S4. We'll open the hangar doors. You can go kick the tires, and you have to promise to never talk about it again. I have not. The only NDA I signed was to go into Skinwalker Ranch under the new owner. And he allowed us, it's never been imposed. We went in there, he wanted to have an understanding about how we were going to move forward. He has honored that agreement. We've had no problems, but from the government, no.
Yeah, I've never been paid by our military, our intelligence community, or any kind of agency to tell me to stop or not say something. I've never, held a security clearance that forbids me from doing anything, and I've never signed an NDA that would restrict me in any way. I've only been assisted, never resisted.
Yeah, let's clarify the NDA that we signed to go into Skinwalker Ranch. Now, the only information that could have been said to be held back at that time was the identity of the owner, because that was part of the agreement, that if he let us on there, let us continue working on our film, that we will sit on his identity, which we did, and we disguised him in the film, and later it's his identity, Brandon Fugal, has come out and people are aware of who he is. So
yeah, that's super important, Matt. I mean, so the whole idea was that we can be trusted, that we're not going to go out and say to the world, this is the new owner of Skinwalker Ranch. He did that on his own. That wasn't us. We never did it. We protected that. So, what we're talking about is, have you signed anything that stops you from revealing the truth about something as for George and Matt as journalists and, for me as a filmmaker? And the answer is absolutely not.
Got quite a few questions regarding a possible New York Times article. One specifically here from John Cookson. Are the rumors of an upcoming New York Times article in recovered craft credible? Is it going to happen?
Well, and say this. I know that they have been working on it. There is no question about that, because I know 4 people who have been contacted by the reporters who've been working on it. It most likely would focus on stories about crash retrievals. As I have said in a couple of interviews, it's a heavy lift. For the New York Times to print a story like that, it's hard to get that past the editor. So you have to have something really solid. I suspect, it's been several weeks now that has been floating around out there. There is in fact, a factual basis for why people would speculate about it. Whether they'll be able to get it actually published or not, I don't know. All
right, 2 more quick questions I think I can get in here. This one's interesting, and I've thought this too, being kind of new to this community. Do you honestly think someone out there is watching you? The way they put it are, this is from Keith, any men in black sniffing around? I mean, do you think, are your phones tapped or you're being watched?
Well, I think all of our phones are tapped. I mean, since Snowden came forward with his revelations, all of our electronic communications are sucked up and go into some giant supercomputer facility, probably the one in Utah that Matt and I went to go see. That's just a fact. Whether anybody's sifting through it to look at ours, that's another matter. But yeah, I think I'm very careful about it. I told the story on the Rogan podcast about the Area 51 days when we were first working on that story, how, I took umbrage at the idea that people were listening to my phone calls, and it happened. 6 people who I talked to on the phone right in a row were visited and told to shut the hell up. And it outraged me at the time. Today, we assume that everything is monitored to some degree or another. Back then, it seemed outrageous that somebody would be, without a warrant, would be listening on the phones at a news organization, but they certainly were. And I think they probably still are.
Jeremy, here's one for you. This comes from Brian Correa. It kind of goes to the heart of what you were just talking about, dealing with trolls and other people and getting stressed out about it. He says music is such a huge part of many folks' lives. What's your go-to? He says record, music, song, when you need to de-stress from the nut job trolls.
I just want to say publicly that George Knapp has been giving me a musical education for many years now. I am musically challenged. However, I have been learning the ways of music. I would like to say the Beatles is kind of my go-to thing because it makes me happy. But when I'm in full warrior mode and I'm ready to take on the trolls, then I absolutely, definitely, besides putting on Robbie Williams, I put on Die Antwoord. It is the go-to awesome one. And the only band I really love and know, the only band in the universe, is Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros, specifically Alex Ebert. He's an incredible artist. I have another friend, Elvis Perkins, son of Anthony Perkins, who's an incredible musician. But those make me relax. The one I go to when I'm going into warfare for the trolls, Die Antwoord.
And if anyone wants to look up Die Antwoord, don't do it at work. George, Matt, real quick, Ron, what's your guys' go-to?
There's no Tom DeLonge mentioned in here. Okay, we'll go. No, it's all Zeppelin all the time, or else I watch some.
Oh
baseball.
yeah, Bobby, yeah, for sure, Zeppelin.
It's Zeppelin and
Into the
George,
light.
we got. Or I turn on some sports, George. We got Dodgers Giants coming up tomorrow, Thursday. So baseball season is starting back up again. So that's some fun stuff happening that I'm going to look forward to. Matt, over to you now. I see you're on mute, so unmute yourself, Matt, and jump in.
I don't have a go-to. My selection changes on a daily basis, so that's not a great question for me.
Mine's okay, and I like this. I'll digress a little bit. Robert Plant one time was asked about Led Zeppelin years after the band. It's been 50 years since John Bonham died, their drummer. But anyway, and he says, "Oh, that little Hobbit band that I was a part of. Oh, they do mystical stuff. And if you listen to them, the Misty Mountain Hop. Let's go through they do little Hobbit stuff, mystery type of music that fascinates me, and I think sort of fits with some of this. Well, with Mystery Wire, but
I think Bobby Plant might be real into UFOs. I have direct knowledge of that.
Bobby.
Okay.
Bobby Plant.
Bobby, you call him Bobby. You go Bobby. You're on first name basis. Well, me and Jimmy Page.
By the way, that was the funniest reaction I got from all the stuff I've read from Rogan. Is somebody saw my wild hair and look, and they said, "Hey, I didn't know Jimmy Page knew so much about aliens." So yeah, my go-to comfort food music is always the Beatles. I've got a massive collection. I've got bootlegs and concerts and all the individual recordings of all the individual Beatles and a lot of stuff that probably has been ripped off somewhere, but I've got a pile of it. Matt introduces me to a lot of newer music, newer groups. My Morning Jacket is really good. I do listen to Tom DeLonge's band, Angels and Airwaves. I think it's better than Blink-182. And there's a lot of great music out there to listen to. But for an old guy like me, I need somebody like Matt and Jeremy to clue me in.
Oh, you need Matt. I'm of no help, George.
You've already said you're musically challenged, so
I am. That's the right way to say it, apparently.
I want to know. I have a viewer question for you here, Jeremy. What's over your right shoulder back there? The guy looks like he's been gone for a while over there. Who's?
That's Roosevelt.
That's Roosevelt. Okay, the skull.
He's my boy. Yeah, Roosevelt. I got him when eBay was allowed to sell bones.
Okay, so that's just right. My question. Duncan, you got some more, but that was mine.
I got a bunch here. Okay.
Wait, is this live? How did people ask that question?
It's magic. Just magic. We're in Vegas. Magic.
That was just me.
Oh yeah, that's Roosevelt. Yeah.
Not Teddy or Theodore, not an FDR or.
No, that's just Roosevelt. He's the haunt. If I'm the haunt, he's my haunt.
Okay. There you go. Thank you.
So I got a question here from Jason, who says he's with MUFON Canada.
Oh, I know Jason. Jason's a great dude.
He says, outside of any government-confirmed UFO sighting encounter, what is your favorite, if you can classify it this way, your favorite UFO event that you feel that you can adequately back up by witness testimony?
Outside of the government.
George.
Go ahead.
No, you want me to do it?
Yeah.
I like mass sightings. I like the Phoenix Lights. It's incredible. So the military sightings are great because everything is highly documented and by credible people. But a mass sighting, that is powerful. I made a pact with myself a long time ago. Next time there's a mass sighting like Phoenix Lights, I'm on a plane, 2 seconds, no questions asked. So the mass sightings like the Phoenix Lights are important. But I will remind you of a couple things. So one that is really important to me is the one in South Africa at the Ariel School. This one is important because Dr. John Mack, head of Harvard Psychiatry, went out there with the BBC the next day. Now, why this one is important to me is because it involved a whole bunch of children that saw this, and they can't make a coherent story together. I met 2 of the women who were the primary observers, meaning they were closest to the beings and the craft. And that's Salma and Liesel. When they told me and George their direct stories, that was powerful. We're talking about craft that come down out of school. There's, dozens and dozens of kids that see it. We got head of Harvard Psychiatry coming the next day and a whole bunch of news reporters from BBC. That is an important case because craft landed, beings were present, and they projected an image into these children's minds, which to the day haunts them. So mass sightings, and particularly the Ariel School encounter, is real important, I believe. I think it's an important series of events.
A couple of examples come to mind. It's hard to separate them from non-government involved sightings, but there's one, it's on video. It happened at a place called Papoose Lake. And in 1989, Bob Lazar took a group of people out there 3 weeks in a row. He said that on Wednesday nights, these things do these little test flights. They come up above the mountains over Papoose Lake, where there's never been a facility, according to the official statements of our government. And sure enough, there was one captured on video. I think they had video of another one where they screwed it up. That's not in any official data bank. There are some cases that I brought back from Russia. It's from their military. There was one over an ICBM base in the Ukraine where this giant UFO appeared over the base, split into pieces, melded back together, performed amazing maneuvers over a course of 4 hours. The official witness reports from officers were entered into the record because of what happened next. And that is these, whatever they were, interfered with the launch control system of these nuclear missiles. And it entered the codes into the system, into the launch control facility. These missiles were enabled and were ready to go. And then poof, the UFO goes away. The launch control system goes back to normal. They send in a team of investigators from Moscow to figure out what had happened. The guy who was in charge of the study, Colonel Boris Sokolov, said, we concluded these UFOs were from somewhere else, and they were making a statement about these missiles, that this might be your most powerful weapon system, but we're not impressed. The fact is that our government had the same experience. It's called the Northern Tier case in the 1970s, where a series of UFOs over these 5 nuclear bases along the US and Canadian border were visited. They were caught on radar. The witnesses who work at these top secret facilities they spotted them. They sent planes and helicopters to chase them, and they went away. They also interfered with those nuclear missiles. And had we gone to war at that time, we would not have had those missiles available to us. I think the Travis Walton case is really intriguing. I think what happened to Whitley Strieber is genuine. I don't know what it is. We can't say it's aliens. It's some kind of an intelligence that has followed him in different forms over the years. The fact that he is a novelist has poisoned that lifetime of experiences for a lot of people because he is a creative writer, but I think it's legit. I think it really happened.
Now, along the lines of, you're speaking of Russia, you made the trip to Russia, definitely about some of their program over there. Joe asks, how do Russia and China respond publicly or off the record to the current assertions that Tic Tac UAPs, the videos, are possibly their technology? And is that the threat to the U.S. or anyone else?
I don't know anyone who's asked that question to them. They don't have a press like in our country that can say, hey, Vlad, what's the deal on the Tic Tac? So I have not seen any statements from them. I know what historically they have done, and that's to make fun of it, same as our government has done. I know during all through the Cold War, from Stalin on, they officially said UFOs are creation of the American CIA and the American media. It's a ploy. Don't pay any attention to it. Officially, nobody talked about UFOs in public. Behind the scenes, as in our country, of course they studied it for the same reasons we studied. They didn't know where these things were from. They worried it might be American technology. They wanted to study it and figure it out. So the Chinese government does not have an open and free press to face. The Russian government doesn't either. It'd be great to get some statements out of them, but I haven't seen them.
Let's see. John asks, what's next for Skinwalker Ranch? He says, do you think it'll become an attraction where people can visit? And that's actually probably a very good question. I know I asked George this. Other people have asked, can you visit Skinwalker Ranch? So to his point, what's next, and can you, or should
well,
you?
You can't visit Skinwalker Ranch, and there are pretty good reasons for that. It's interactive. Whatever it is, it's there, it's interactive, and you never know how it's going to respond to intruders, trespassers, vandals. It's a privately owned ranch, property. Visitors are not welcome unless you get an invitation from Brandon, the principal owner. That has not stopped legions of people from showing up out there and trying to get on the property, from trespassing, from taking home souvenirs like the front gate, or from causing other kinds of problems, having little beer parties out there, taking LSD or other psychoactive substances in order to interact with aliens. a lot of crazy stuff goes on. They're never going to open it up as an amusement park or a boarding house or a hotel, because you don't know what would happen. You don't know how the phenomenon would interact. On one hand, you don't want it to react in a bad way. You've seen the mutilated cow video. And you're not quite sure how it's going to react to interlopers. And secondly, you don't want to mess with the investigation that is now underway. Brandon and his team have revealed that season 2 of the Skinwalker TV series is in production starting right about now. Hopefully they'll have a lot more findings that we'll be able to see some months from now, photos, videos. It was a pretty interesting rollout in season 1. You have a scientist who was brought on board as part of the team who was highly dubious, skeptical about the stories, who's now had his own experiences and personal consequences. I look forward to seeing more from them. But no, people are not welcome there to just show up. They do it every day, but they're not welcome.
Another question here, and let me ask this and then I'll add a little context to a question that I've had from someone. Eric Linden asked, in your summation, what were the Tic Tacs and the other craft? What were they doing in or above the water? I know that goes to Dave Fravor's comments. He talks a lot about how the water was reacting, and I've also had, and maybe I'll just throw this question out to you guys. I had someone from California mention to me, speaking of underwater things, and this is unrelated to that, but about is it Walker Lake and the submarine tunnels, the out to the ocean. There's a big, well, I don't know if it's conspiracy about the Navy having a base.
The natural waterways, the natural waterways that go to China Lake. I looked into that with somebody who would know.
Not there.
But anyway, back to your point about the Tic Tac. Throw the football. Who wants to talk?
Go for it.
Yeah, look, this is really important, and people have been missing the point on this. Commander Fravor witnessed one of many Tic Tacs that had been UFOs shaped like a Tic Tac that had been dropping in from above the volume scan of the Spy 1 radar down to surface level of the water. I'm going to say in less than a second. And they were doing so continuously. Why they just sent out Commander Fravor at this one time when they had people that were very capable of looking before? Maybe there were people that were sent before. Commander Fravor's not aware of that. However, the Tic Tacs were dropping down, and I quote, appeared to be docking with another craft that was under the water, a USO, unidentified submerged object. This other craft looked like a cross under the water. There's more information on that, but essentially there was another object under the water. There was another craft, and the Tic Tacs were dropping down and doing a function. Whatever that function is, we don't know. But that's very important. This is not an isolated UFO. There were a number of them over the course of a number of days, and they were dropping in at trajectories, which got the attention of a number of weapon systems. You can imply what that means. They were dropping down at trajectories of ICBMs. So they were coming.
Do any of you know, have you heard word of other pilots seeing these underwater events or below the surface events? Or
yes.
It's not just Fravor saying this, correct?
About the Nimitz encounters?
Any.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I get emails, calls every day. I'm sure George does as well. Absolutely. I got some cases I'll put forward. But here's the deal. Let's just boil it down. It was not one event with one pilot. There were a number of other eyes on this extraordinary propulsion system. And it's not Chinese. It's not Russian. They wish it was. We wish it was ours. That's why this is a national security threat. The active jamming, I just talked with a couple of the pilots that filmed the videos. There was an active jamming. What they call it is actually offensive jamming in non-wartime areas, like off the coast of Pacific Ocean at this time, California. This was offensive jamming. That is an act of war. you do this, and there's going to be an equal response. So the takeaway is this: there was another craft under the water. There may be other footage. It might, that one day is what we know about. I don't know. I'm still looking into this. But there was another craft. And these things were, quote unquote, docking. And they were coming in at extraordinary speeds and maneuvering in ways that we just don't have with modern propulsion. So whoever these are, they clearly are working off of some sort of technology that replicates the gravitational propulsion fields that Bob Lazar talked about. Full stop. Deal with it.
If you had this technology that can create sort of a plasma bubble around you that distorts space and time and travel through the air in the way that we have seen with these unidentifieds in those 3 videos, you could do the same thing, travel through water that way. You might even be able to travel through land that way. And that's the technology that our government is now trying to figure out. There is a rich history of USOs, unidentified submerged objects, sort of leaning towards, what was the James Cameron movie, The Abyss?
The
I don't know if it
Abyss,
goes that
yes.
far, where we've got underwater cities and things of that sort. But there's a long history of USO activity that has been detected over the years, and incident reports. And somewhere in that data center that is Jeremy has just outed, maybe there are files that we will eventually get to see. You know, the speculation, and even Fravor speculated, don't know it for sure, but the idea was that Tic Tac may have been rendezvousing with whatever it was that was bigger under the water. That would make sense. That would make sense.
Yeah, he was pretty sure in our first interview. But here's what George is talking about. Let's just nail this home for the very basic understanding. We're talking about trans-medium craft, space, air, and water. If you can create a distortion around a craft, you can move through those mediums with zero resistance. I will say something I never said before. I was the guest a couple of times at the Annapolis Naval Academy. Pretty amazing place. I was able to go to courses. I was able to sit in on classes there. What we're seeing with these technologies, they are not electrogravitic. I was able to go to the special programs area at the Naval.
This is before you became an undercover agent for the Men in Black.
Right.
Full disclosure.
Look, I'm saying it as it is. So I was able to go to the special projects area and see the wind tunnel. And what was presented to me was, what is the most aerodynamic as a golf ball with the divots. Then I saw on the podium a disc, as a disc being a great trans-medium shape. Of course, I was asking questions. That's why I was there. Okay. Here's the deal. Whatever we're seeing in these encounters, they are not electrogravitic. They are not ionized propulsion systems. These are gravitational propulsion systems. They have to be. There's no doubt about it. That's the way the transmedium craft can possibly do the maneuvers, like Commander Fravor explained, looking like a ping pong ball, bouncing across the side of an empty glass. Inertia is canceled. So this is really important that people understand this idea of a transmedium craft. And I hope I'm conveying it in a really specific way for people.
I think so. One other question here from Chris. And this goes kind of to the heart of what you guys have been talking about. He asked, do you know, and the premise of this is obviously we know what we kind of know, we think, what the U.S., United States military has seen, done, recorded, retrieved maybe. But he asked, do you know if other countries have crash retrieval wreckage?
For 100%, no, but I can tell you 100% they've tried to get it. That was one of the things that Senator Reid had said as a justification for when he and his fellow senators authorized the money that became OSAP and then later became ATIP. We need to study this stuff because we have strong indications that the Russians and the Chinese are studying it as well. I was in Russia twice. I know that they studied it on a broad scope for a long time. I know that they sent out people to alleged crash sites to retrieve materials that then disappeared into some kind of deep dark Soviet system and then into the current system. They are trying to study it. Our government believes they have these kinds of materials, both the Russians and the Chinese, and we're in a race to try to figure out the technology, and the first one who figures it out wins.
George, you and Matt have reported on this, and I think it should be like really crystal clear for people. You and Matt put out an article that said, a document that said Senator Harry Reid tried to get SAP status for OSAP so that it could communicate with other SAP UFO programs. They were denied access, so they couldn't share. But the reason they asked for it is because they knew about things like materials, hardware programs related to UFOs. You got to make that crystal. Will you make that crystal clear for me?
Well, the letter was written in 2009 from Senator Reid to the Department of Defense. I forget the exact title of the guy who received it. It was CC'd at the bottom to a very exclusive little list, a bigot list it's called, of the other people who were directly involved in that program. Some of the names have not been made public. I think they probably would not surprise folks. There are a couple on there that are not well known. One of the names is Lou Elizondo, because he was actually working on ATIP at the time. That remarkable document asks for permission to create a special access program, which would do a couple of things. One, it would mean that ATIP, or whatever it was going to be called, would not have to compete for money every year, would not have to worry about some other program coming in and pilfering from its budget. And two, if it's a special access program, it could petition for permission to interact with other UFO programs, with other materials. So if in fact somebody really did have pieces of metamaterial, strange mystery metal, or a fully intact craft that had been retrieved from, say, an archaeological site or just was left behind, whoever is stashing the goodies, that they could interact with them and maybe find out what everybody knows. The Department of Defense wasted little time in slamming the door and saying, no, you can't come in.
And real quick on that, I'm going to, I think, share my screen. You're probably seeing the wrong window right now because I'm not sure how to do this.
Yeah, that's it.
We got the screen. Yeah.
You got the letter up there. I believe this
Yeah.
is the letter. This is on our document site on Mystery Wire. This is just one of the many things you can see, but you know what these guys are talking about. It's all right here. It's in black and white. It's the real letter.
Also in that section are the two documents that we unveiled on Rogan's, the Rogan podcast. So I didn't know, I brought along a couple of things that we had recently obtained and decided to make public, and I wanted to give him the first look at them. They're called DIRDs, Defense Intelligence Reference Documents. There were 38 of these that were written for OSAP, that program, and they're not necessarily directly about UFOs. What the attempt is to create a baseline of scientific information at the time. So they assigned different pieces of the puzzle to different scientists who may or may not have been interested in the UFO mystery, but they said, all right, look, give us the state-of-the-art knowledge about hypersonic aircraft, how to track them through space, or give us a state-of-the-art assessment of warp drive. What do we know about it? What would it take to build something like this? And they did it on 38 different topics. Most of those have not been made public. They were published on what's called JWICs, so that Pentagon agencies, intelligence agencies, and some defense contractors could read them. They're no longer available. So we've been sort of, as we acquire copies of them, we've been making them public when we can. I think there are 10 that are now up there on our
Correct.
website.
We have 10 on our site.
We presented two of the most recent acquisitions to Rogan, who I don't think he was all that impressed by them, but they're pretty cool papers, a little bit more math in them that makes me comfortable. But one of them was a reassessment of the Drake equation to try to figure out how many intelligent ET civilizations might be out there and how close they are to us. And I think the closest was something like 1,300 light years. Not exactly a walk across the park, but it's also not on the other side of the universe. And then the other paper was about metamaterials, speculating on what we could do with metamaterials, possible uses for metamaterials once that we learn how to engineer them. And we've come a long way in the 11 years since that paper was made public. Those documents are on our website if people want to check them out.
Sir Ron.
All right, very good. Thank you. I've had to change locations. What do you think of the headgear here? We
Looks
okay
good.
with that?
Looks
In
good,
the
man.
newsroom. I mean, it's
Yeah.
different location here. But guys, no, it's been a pleasure, very enlightening today, Jeremy. I know your time is very valuable. We appreciate you taking some time with us, talk a little bit about what you're doing. Real quick, I know you touched on a project that you're working on right now. What's the next thing we can expect out of you, Jeremy? Real quick as we wrap this up.
I'm getting down and dirty on Twitter, baby. That's
Okay.
what you can expect me to. No, I've got.
That's a dirty place.
It is. You know, sometimes you got to punch back. Right now, I'm very excited. I have a new methodology with which I'm getting reports from individuals. I've had to go full Ed Snowden and beyond to get the information that I have recently. But I feel this is an exciting time for the UFO topic in pop culture. And I think what you can expect from me, you know, is both film and television, as well as just new reports, audio reports telling you information you haven't heard before. I mean, it's a very exciting time. We'll see what happens. My website is extraordinarybeliefs.com. I'm the most easy person in the world to find. My wife might argue, but I am. And so it's just very simple. If you guys want to tune into my work, check it out. But I feel like this is a very extraordinary time with pop culture, the UFO topic. We're getting closer to the truth than ever before. But you should ask George and Matt that. I mean, they've been at this longer than me, and they've told me this is a time that is different than other times about UFOs.
Matt can go first, and I'll wrap it up.
Okay.
Well, I think there's no doubt that these are different times, more ways than one. But there definitely seems to be a groundswell of attention being paid to the topic. It's taken more and more seriously. You're seeing national news on it on a regular basis. You're seeing, you know, Fox News reporting on it. You're seeing people coming from both sides of the divide to study it. I think only good things can come of it, and hopefully we can get to the bottom of it. And if we do, I think we've said it before in other podcasts and in this one, humanity changes. It changes at a rapid pace.
I would just say this. I mean, Matt and I put together this cool little road trip to Rogan story that was kind of a fun thing behind the scenes. We ended with we ended our trip to Rogan and seeing Rogan taking a picture by his werewolf, his dog Spot. That's pretty funny. And we had a good time. I know, you know, but there's serious stuff at work here. I was impressed by Rogan's depth of knowledge about the philosophical implications, what this might mean. The last 40 minutes we had in the discussion was not about specific UFO cases, but it was about the larger implications for humanity, who these beings are, why they're interacting with us in this way. We don't really have any big answers, but I was impressed by how much thought he had put into it, and can't thank him enough for having us on and giving this a broader platform, because the more people who are engaged in this, the quicker we might get some answers. I know there's a lot of discussion about disclosure and whether or not this New York Times story is going to blow open crash retrievals, and whether we're on the verge of some big expose that's going to help us all understand. I am not necessarily optimistic in that regard. I think the best we can hope for is we will learn more about what our government knows about UFOs because of all the people who are now involved and all the pressure being put by members of Congress and the media. But even if we learn everything they've got in their vaults, it doesn't necessarily mean we know all the answers. The UFO part of this mystery, I think, is one spoke on a wheel. We can go down that rabbit hole and learn a lot, but we may not learn the ultimate picture until we bring in disparate phenomena like what was reported at Skinwalker Ranch and figure out what this intelligence is trying to tell us by giving us little glimpses here and there. It's like a performance, a display. It seems like it's trying to get our attention and teach us something. So far, we're too dumb to learn it. I am not at all convinced that people in the government know everything there is to know about these visitors and this intelligence, but we have to at least try, and it's a really exciting time. It's just things breaking all over the place, all kinds of new leads, all kinds of new energy and enthusiasm from the general public. Joe Rogan's responsible for a lot of that, and then the people assembled here are responsible for a chunk of it too.
Thank you, George. You cleared up a lot of things there, including what that critter was that he had in his hand there. I thought it was something he'd shot with a bow on Ted Nugent's ranch or something, but it was not. It was
a werewolf. Yeah.
It was a werewolf. So thank you everybody for listening here. For Duncan Phoenix, for Matt Adams, for George Knapp, and our special guest Jeremy Corbell. I'm Ron Futrell. And check out MysteryWire.com. Thanks for listening, everybody, and bye for now. A lot more to come in the future.
And hold on.
Oh, you got something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Germs are real, and so
What?
are UFOs.
I got my mask. Hold on. Wait, where's it at here? Got your mask on? But you can take them out with that critter you got in your hands there. Okay. All right. Thanks for watching, everybody, and listening in. Bye for now.
I think